Hello, welcome to Thursday Garden Chat, which is the weekly free broadcast run by Garden Masterclass. Our normal business is putting on day workshops led by garden and landscape experts across Great Britain and Ireland, and increasingly on the European mainland as well. Since the pandemic, however, we have gone global. We have started doing online broadcasts. A lot of these are pay-to-view webinars, which we do with garden and landscape experts from all over the world to our global audience. However, this event is our Thursday Garden Chat, which is a pro bono. It's a free event which we put on every Thursday for an hour with somebody who is a gardener. It could be a head gardener, a botanist, a garden historian, a photographer, a designer, a huge range of people we talk to. And these are recorded and they go up on our YouTube channel and we keep them there for a couple of months. The best content then goes to our members channel, but at any one time we've got something up to 100 hours of free, really interesting garden viewing on YouTube. Now, we do this for free and we would really appreciate donations to help with our running costs, and you can do this with the donate button which you can find on the online page of our website.
Over to you, Noel.
Great, thank you, Annie, thank you. So now with our whole Garden Masterclass programme, we very much, although our focus has been very much on garden design and perennials and naturalistic planting, we do try to explore all parts of horticulture. Tonight we are visiting a bit of a niche subject, alpines, although hopefully towards the end of the talk we will see perhaps the relevance of alpines for other environments. And, back in January we had a wonderful webinar with Panayotti Kaleides talking about steppe plants, and of course the steppe and alpine very much kind of segue into each other. So this is a world of very much plantsmanship, small plants, often with their own really exquisite aesthetics. And we're talking to somebody who has traveled the world looking at alpines, and not just alpines, but the environments and the people of those environments. So we go to that famously hilly country, we go to the Netherlands to meet Harry Jans. Over to you, Harry.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. I will share the screen right away, and sorry for this, but well, I first will do a short introduction about myself. I'm living in the Netherlands, near Arnhem, in the middle of the Netherlands. My garden is about 27 meters above sea level. That's not very high. You won't expect that it's possible to grow plants from high mountain ranges from say 4,000 meters in a low country. I've studied garden design and maintenance, but have been employed since 1982 by the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Environment. And my current job is specialist at winter maintenance. So I have to manage salt spreaders and snow plows these days, completely different from what I've studied. But I always loved plants. And during my vacation in 1981, I got fascinated by Alpine plants when we were in Switzerland on holiday. And visiting in the large garden center, they gave me the address of a very large Alpine nursery on the continent, and that was Mr. Eschman in Luzern. And there I bought my first Alpine plants. And of course I went to the mountains in Switzerland, and you see on these pictures from this wonderful little booklet, which I still have. And it started me off with growing the plants. After a few years, I got member of other societies worldwide, and I really tried to get as much information as possible. Well, there's a New Zealand Alpine Garden Society, NARCS in New Zealand, in America, and of course the Scottish Rock Garden and Alpine Garden Society. And I got contacts with many other rock gardeners and exchanged plants. And I organized also little tours to Lake Garda area and the Czech Republic. And I also joined conferences. And in 1994, I was invited by the Alpine Garden Society to join an expedition. It was a special expedition. There was a summer party looking at the locations for 6 weeks, and I was part of the autumn seed collecting tour. Well, you see a few well-known members from this trip, and this trip really changed my life. A few pictures from, well, 25 years ago. At that time, this, for instance, the policemen here, we were only allowed to certain areas to inspect and to collect plants. We did a lot of herbarium material, which is divided by several botanical gardens. It is a lot of work, but I learned so much. And but it's not always holiday when you do things like that. It's working till 2 o'clock at night, morning early up for 6 weeks, and I still remember in 6 weeks I lost 10 kilos. That's not bad to lose some kilos for that reason. But you have to also sometimes to collect seed in harsh conditions with fresh snow. And this is, for instance, what we have collected on herbarium on such an expedition. Well, after joining these expeditions, you start to read more information about the earlier plant hunters. That's about, say, 100 years ago. There are 3 very famous, there are more, but these are very famous people in that field. That's George Forrest. And he was a very famous plant hunter for the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh, who collected in total around more than 31,000 plant specimens on 7 expeditions in China. And this was mainly done in the province of Yunnan between 1994 and 1932. Unfortunately, he died on his last expedition in 1932 as on a massive heart failure. This man inspired me to look at plants. And if I look at these pictures like you see here, this is completely different how our accommodations are these days. Now these days we have wonderful hotels, good roads, etc. This is, by the way, a picture in Dali made by George Forrest in 1906. And I made the same picture about 100 years ago. You can see there's not much variation. It's still the same layout. And Dali is a wonderful city to look at plants. This is also in the area of Dali. This is the Yulongshan, a black and white picture. When you see these pictures, you have to think about the harsh conditions they have to cope to collect so many species which we have now in cultivation. This is a very special plant to me. This is Cypripedium lady slipper. This is the original collection from George Forrest and also named after him. This plant was never found again. Only once, I think in the 30s, it was found again. But we were very lucky in 1996 on an expedition from the AGS. We found it back. Unfortunately, this area is now completely covered by about 6 meters of debris from a moraine, which came down after melting of some glaciers. But it's a beautiful plant, and I was very proud to find it in such good condition. A few images from Mr. George Forrest, and in black and white. And a few years later, I found this plant also again in full color. And it was an amazing plant. I think it's not a cultivation. It's a beauty of just 20 centimeters tall and large orange flowers. Another plant which is very often grown, especially in the UK, is Paragolegia microphylla. This is a black and white picture made by George Forrest, but this is made by me on the Baimashan. There's a location on the Baimashan with hundreds of flowers in the sheer rock faces in different colors, from pale pink to deep pink or purple, and even once in a while you'll find white ones. Another very famous plant hunter to China was Ernst Henry Wilson, or Chinese Wilson. Ernst Wilson went to China for the Fitch nursery to collect seeds of the dove tree. You will see later on some pictures of it. He received information about its location from another one, Augustine Henry. But when he arrived at the location, he got the data where it was grown, this big tree. The big tree was cut down and it was used for timber wood for a house. But thank God, a few months later, on May 19th, he found more trees and seeds, and he collected the seeds and brought it into cultivation. Another plant which he collected was Lilium regale, and very famous. You will see a picture of him later as well. As you see, Ernst Wilson had a lot of people working for him. He was not only collecting himself, but a lot of these plant hunters had a lot of Chinese people and Tibetan people sending out people in the mountains to collect seeds and plants for him. Another, well, this is to give you contrast how things can change. On the left corner, in the corner below, you see this is the village of Songpan, a place visited by Ernst Wilson many times, and Joseph Rock as well. And this is the same bridge still there about 100 years later. Of course, it's a bit repainted and retiled, but still at the same spot. So not everything has changed in 100 years. This is the official original sheet, Hebraic sheet from the dove tree made by Ernst Wilson. Unfortunately, he thought he introduced this tree to cultivation, but it was Pierre David. He was just a few years earlier to send it to Paris and introduce it into cultivation. And here it is, an amazing tree. It's a pretty big tree, so it's not a really good tree for the small garden, but it's one of a kind. When I was in China in 2007, we went on a small tour. We went into the Min Valley. Min Valley is famous for the Lilium regale. I've been there before, but they were all out of flower. And now I was a bit earlier, and Ernst Wilson has written several books. And one of the books he wrote that the lilies were growing on the rooftops of houses. And this is a rooftop of a house full of Lilium regale. So even after 100 years, it hasn't changed. This is a very famous picture by Ernst Wilson of the tea porters. These tea porters are carrying up to 150 kilograms on brick teas on their back and traveling over many passes into Tibet to sell their tea. This is so special, and the Chinese were very happy with the picture, so they made a statue to remember the brick tea porters, and this is in Ya'an, in the province of Sichuan. Another famous plant hunter was Joseph Rock. Joseph Rock was born in Austria and immigrated to the United States in 1905. Till 1920, he worked in Hawaii as a botanist. And from 1922 to 1933, he explored many provinces in China, starting in Lijiang in Yunnan province. And his expeditions were sponsored by the National Geographic Society, the Smithsonian Institute, or the Harvard University. He widely traveled into Gansu, Qinghai, and Tibet, and he was especially gifted in the national language, a minority in Yunnan. So not many plants named after him or introduced by him. Peony rockiae, I did some research, and more the specialists are wondering if this is an official species. But let's say let's keep it for Peony rockiae right now. Joseph Rock has a very large archive of pictures. This is a black and white picture made by him somewhere in Tibet. His pictures are well known. The National Geographic has published a wide selection of them. And this is another picture, black and white, but this was not made by him, but made by myself in 2000. So nothing has changed more or less in, say, 70, 80 years. This was on another expedition in 2000, a 6 weeks expedition to the province of Gansu and Qinghai, Sichuan and Qinghai. Well, this brings me more or less into another field. You've seen some introduction by the famous plant hunters, and this map will give you an idea of some locations I've explored for plants. We won't go to every single blue dot on the screen, but we will. I start with some pictures in the area in Nepal and in the Himalayas. And we will go to Europe, into Asia. We will go a bit in Africa, New Zealand, and we end up in South America. So we'll give you a bit of impression how big the variation in alpines is. Well, this is in Yunnan. Yunnan is for me one of the richest provinces to look at plants. And if you have seen plants in the wild, growing in the wild, you learn so much from them. You can read 20 books about a certain plant species, but when you have seen it in the wild, you learn so much more. So Yunnan is a really super location, and you don't need to travel wide from the road. I call this more or less also, well, roadside botany. We go up by jeep or by bus up to 4,500 meters. You get out, walk into the fields, and you can search for alpines. A few special plants in that area: Spongiocapella yunnanensis, growing in these rocks. It's a super plant. It's more like a small shrub. It's very slow growing, but very large pink flowers and very nice orangey seed heads. Maybe you have heard of the Hypericum nanum in Europe. This is the Hypericum nanum, the king of the Alps, the king of the Himalayas. Kyrgyzstan hockeri. It's the only species from this genus. It's only growing above 4,500 meters and always on these windswept areas and corners, and always in granite stone. It's impossible to grow this plant. We've tried it several times from seed, and after 6 months, it's just gone. So just enjoy plants in the wild. Just for your information, it's on my tours, it's never allowed to collect plants because it's forbidden. There are many protocols and rules. So just take a nice picture as souvenir. This is a close-up of it, very nice and hairy. That's protecting the plant from drying out and too much cold. Another special plant is the Genesis androsaceae, primulaceae. This makes a very large, well, almost big cushion up to 30 centimeters. This is a very old plant, maybe 60, 70, 80 years old. And it makes a complete, almost snowball. The flowers are very nice, compact, stemless. You see some red centers. Those flowers are already pollinated or are a bit older. The yellow-green ones are fresh opened flowers. It's not easy in cultivation. Well, you can grow it, but it never flowers. And Cypripedium, how wonderful it is in nature. In cultivation, it makes a nice cushion, but you never get a flower on it. A bit taller one, this is near Tianxi Lake, a very nice unspoiled area near Zhongliang in Yunnan province. It's Adonis davidii. This is very nice pale blue reverse of the flower. I don't only take pictures of plants, I also try to make some portraits of people. Well, it's another, well, it's trial and error to get people pictures of, but now and then you get some nice shots. These are typical Tibetan people, and they very often have golden teeth, and I like the way how they dress. We end up now in the Sichuan, another province which is a province where you can easily look at high alpines, but also lower areas into the shrubbery and forests. You can see a bus here. We park the bus and we just walk along, and you see people wandering along to look at plants. For instance, this Trollius ferrari, with a nice, almost reddish back reverse of the flower. Very compact. If you grow this in your garden, it will, go up to 20 centimeters at least. But if you want to go to areas like this, you have to go there, say the second and the third week in June. That's the best time to look at these plants. Higher up, this is another pass, the Balanchamp Pass, full of Mecanopsis. You can see the red poppy as well there, or a blue one. But this is a very nice yellow one, Mecanopsis schulii, up to 30 centimeters tall. For me, it's not possible to grow in our low country. It's just too hot. Maybe Scotland is the best way to grow it. Have you ever seen this one? It's an almost black primula. It's very dark, deep purple, but it's a primula only known from one small location. I've heard it is in cultivation in Scotland, so let's hope it will be distributed in the future, but it's not an easy one, I think. But it's very special with a bit farina on the flowers. Primula melanantha. Not far from it, on the same pass, is this wonderful Pedicularis Przewalskia var cristata, just 5 centimeters tall. And for me, they look like small birds with their beak and their body. There are about 350 different Pedicularis in China, but thank God there's a specialist in Germany who can key out most of them, so that's very helpful. It's not possible to grow, very difficult to grow this in cultivation because it's a parasitic plant which parasites on certain grasses. We go to Tibet. Well, it's good to start with this picture of the Potala Palace. It's a very large building. Once it was the biggest building in the world, about 1,000 rooms inside. Now these days it's almost a fortress because there are many soldiers up there. But when we first came there, it was allowed to make pictures anywhere. But these days it's almost not possible to make pictures. It's forbidden because of the political situation. In 2005, we did an expedition to the area of Mount Everest. And our expedition had 20 people and we had 45 yaks with us to carry all our goods. It was a 10 days trek. It was marvelous. The weather was good here, but most of the time we had still some rain and we never really saw the mountains, but the plants were marvelous. I will show some pictures from Tibet. From other area in Tibet. This is a very special pass. And as you can see, it's roadside botany. You can walk over this road on the left and you see the sheets of wonderful Primula agliana. 2 years ago, we were here again, this site, and we were a bit early. The flowers were still okay, but not as massive as this is. So if you go several times to the same area, it can be always different. This is on the same path, a very nice gentian, and you see a small piece of rock just on the right corner, in the low corner. So there's just a moss thickness of maybe 1 inch or 2-3 centimeters, and that's enough to grow this plant on. But again, this is almost not possible to grow in cultivation. And this is the star for me for the pass. We all know Kelta. Kelta is always yellow. I know also location where there are red Keltas, but this is really compact and nice deep pink in color. And I think it's almost impossible to grow it because it likes a very cold atmosphere to grow. This is a very special, they call it the lotus flower in Tibet. I don't know why, but Unfortunately, this plant and many plants in Tibet are collected for medicines, and also this one. So you have to walk up some high areas and screens to see this in flower. Sachuria, there are many Sachurias always looking like this. And after flowering, they normally die. But they grow well from seed, they germinate finally, but you never can keep them for very long. It's always growing at almost at 5,000 meters altitude. Well, many people of you might grow in your garden rhubarb. This is also rhubarb, the giant rhubarb, only growing in the Himalayas. And once in a while, they start to flower. Of course, this is not a flower. The flower is just underneath these leaves, and the leaves will protect the flowers inside for getting really wet. And on the other hand, in this way, the flowers are heated, because outside and inside makes a difference of sometimes between 4 and 6 centigrades. And when it's really, during the night and during the day, it can be very wet, can rain. Insects are protecting themselves. They go into these, below these bracts, and that's where they pollinate the seeds. All these plants are flowering maybe once in after a while, maybe 10 years. They act very strangely. You see more in flower in the background. Sometimes there's a year not a single one is a flower, and other years there are many a flower. And it has to do maybe by a kind of sensor the plant has in itself, and it knows maybe that there's not much snow, and they start to grow. They put up all their energy and start to grow. We are going now to India, part of the Himalayas, and it's a wonderful area. Sikkim is in the north, between Bhutan and Nepal, and on the top is Tibet. And this is the natural growing conditions of Pleona hockeriana, just on the tree in some moss. But also bigger trees, 3,000 meters, a superb magnolia, Magnolia globosa, wonderful flowers, but also nice shiny leaves. And rhododendron there, rhododendron sanibaranum, up to 2 meters tall, and these nice flowers like some small bells hanging together. Higher up, there are very tiny ones. This is maybe 10 centimeters tall, and the flowers up to maybe 2 centimeters. Rhododendron lepidotum, not only in yellow, but also pink, very purple forms. It can vary, some variation. Well, this was the Himalayas. We just quickly move on to Europe, because not everyone can move to far corners. And if you go to Europe, there are so special areas. And the good locations are, you can go up by cable car and investigate the areas and look at plants. This is in Switzerland, and this is a wonderful plant of Androtheis alpina. Again, this is a plant which is wonderful in the nature. You can collect some seeds. Sometimes seed exchanges will offering it, but it's very, very difficult in cultivation. It is growing straggly, out of character, so just make a nice picture to remember it. This is Spain, for instance, completely different. If you go in at the end of February, Andalusia, you fly to Malaga, and you drive around for a few days. There are thousands and thousands of wonderful narcissi. This is Narcissus cantabricus, wonderful thing. We go to Bulgaria. This is a very old monastery, as you see, rebuilt in 1833. This is a very nice, but the mountains at the back are the Rila Mountains. And the Rila Mountains is an area with very, very many endemic plants. When I go to certain areas, I always try to investigate if there are special endemic plants. And that's where my goal always is, if you go to a certain area. And this here was Prima deorum. and the Primula diorum is growing in very wet conditions. So if you grow it in the garden, you might grow it in a peat block, which stays wet, or the peat garden. So not grow it on the full south facing scree. That's not possible. It's a super plant. The dark color in the back is just the water. So it's really standing with its roots in the water. So if you can get hold of this plant, and sometimes it's possible to grow it from seed, grow it over very wet conditions. Somewhere else was this area, a flat area, a lot of rocks, and plenty of these dwarf Dianthus microlepis. A lot of variation is in it, deep pink, dark pink stripes and knots. It makes some nice cushions, and if you're lucky, you even find white ones. I hope to get some seeds from a Czech grower, and I try to grow this. I have several one in the garden, but try to grow it to get different variation for the garden. We go to Greece. Greece is another wonderful, easy to go country. And I especially went to this country to see this plant, Chalcote Valley. It's a gesneriad, and a special gesneriad only growing on this mountain. It's endemic. And many years I've grown this in my garden. I've never seen it in the wild, and always wanted to see it. And I was lucky to find it in full flower. It's not an easy one, but on Tufa, it's not very difficult at all. Well, this is also a very special picture. I was looking at certain plants in the autumn, and this is cyclamen, a cyclamen hadrifolium, and I found this in the wild, and I called it lipstick. It's a plant with one tube. Everyone knows a cyclamen. This is a crazy thing, and let's hope we can propagate this and distribute it for the people in the future. We go much further away now, to Africa. Very close to the Somalia border are mountains. They're called the Bali Mountains, to 4,000 meters high. And here you see a lobelia ringcupitalum. These are the smaller plants. You see several stages, but when they grow older, they grow like this. And I call this a mega alpine. This can grow up to 8 meters tall. This is a monocarpic plant. So after it flowers, it's flowered, it sets seed, and it falls down, and the thousands of seeds are spread around. It's a very, very special area. I'm glad I visited this area. In the same area, just 300-400 meters lower down, is this lobelia. Can you imagine? This is just 3 centimeters tall compared with the lobelia, which was, well, almost 8 to 10 meters tall. This is nature, and it's just stunning to see this in the wild. Well, many of you might grow Hypericum in your garden, and this is a tree Hypericum, also at the Bali Mountains. I think it can be even hardy. Hypericum revolutum. It's a full flower here. It's making like a curtain of yellow flowers, and I've always tried to get hold of this one, but never got it. So it's one of my goals to try to get this, because this is just a super plant. We stay in Africa. We go to Mount Kenya. And Mount Kenya is a special area. If you walk there, you think you're not on this planet. It's completely different. The plants are different. Everything is different. A lot of snow. We are just maybe 25 kilometers from the equator. There's snow. Yeah, it's a tough walk getting up, but you see these big trees are Dendrosenecio, Keniodendron in the back, and the smaller ones in the front is Keniensis. They are not monocarpic, and it's just a wonderful thing. But this is also special on Mount Kenya. This is the Lobelia keniensis. And you see how these are pollinated. The birds go from flower to flower to collect nectar and pollinate in this way the plants. This might be one of my most special trips I've ever made with my wife. This picture what I saw on a rubbish bin on the botanical garden in Edinburgh. I didn't make any notice of this when I was dealing with the images, and there was a name in the corner that said Socotra. I never heard of Socotra. I just saw the picture and I thought, well, this is weird. I want to see that. So I investigated where Socotra is, and maybe not everyone knows where Socotra is. Well, this is the globe, and I let you know now where Socotra is. There's Socotra. Socotra is an island about 200 kilometers from Yemen. Yemen is here, this is Yemen, this is Somalia, and the Bali Mountains are here. So this is the island of Socotra. So we flew to Dubai, from Dubai to Molucca, and Molucca here. So that was in 2012. And I organized a tour for 2015, but then the riots came, ISIS came, and I had to cancel this trip. This was so special, and I had to put a few pictures in. This is Dracaena cinnamomum, and this is the dragon blood tree. It's endemic to this island. Unfortunately, there's a big problem as the goats are eating the seedlings. So let's hope that they can handle this so these plants and trees can be saved. They're called blackened dragon blood trees as they carve wounds in their bark, and there will be kind of resin will come out like rubber trees. And this is collected, and this is called the dragon blood from the blackened blood tree. This color is used for many years ago, say hundreds of years ago. The Chinese emperors used them for color, but it's also used for the color and used in the furnish from the Stradivarius violin. A few more pictures. This plant you see here is 3 meters wide. It's extremely old already. The one good thing, the goats don't eat it, so that's why it's so old, and they grow under very old, hard conditions. This is the flower of it, Adenium obesum, subspecies Socotranum. And I need even stil even naast. And it normally flowers in April, but we were lucky to find it in October in flower. This is for me one of the most special pictures I made there in Socotra. This is for me National Geographic picture. This man is called Salif the caveman. He was 65 years old and living all his life in this cave. And unfortunately, I heard that he died just recently. And he was married, but his wife was fancy living in this cave. And this is the only soft, this was his bed, and this the only soft part in this cave was this pillow. And this is how tall he is. So the food he uses is not very good for him. Our food in Western countries are much better. That's why we getting much taller. I was walking there on these boots, on these sharp rocks, but he was walking on bare feet. It was a very special to meet him. Kyrgyzstan, another country, easy to travel, lots and lots of flowers. And here you see the eagle man is just still hunting with the eagles there. But if you go to areas like this, you will see many tulips. And this was the tiny tulip, I think one of the dwarfs one, Tulipa heterophylla. And when you walk in these areas, sometimes you find something very special. I thought I found just an anemone just a few weeks when I got back. I heard it was Hepatica falconeri. It was never found after a very small location in Pakistan. And here you can see it's a Hepatica. It's in cultivation now. And you might know John Messi from Ashwood Nursery has got it now in cultivation and also got hybrids and made out of it. It's a very, very special plant. We go to Uzbekistan, and this is Samarkand with this wonderful Registan and Madrash built many years ago. And these areas, when you go on these tours, it's wonderful to visit also some historic sites. This is also in Uzbekistan, the mausoleum of Shah Izinda. the wonderful color there. It's you go back in time, and the people, by the way, are very friendly and are easy countries to travel. We go from Uzbekistan into Tajikistan. If you're lucky and you hit the right time, you can see all these irises, the natural location in full color. A lot of variation you can see, and the yellow one is Colchicum luteum. In the back you see some white. That's all snow. So where the snow melts, that's where you look for iris and colchicum in flower. And another location was Iris bulgarica. In cultivation, mainly with white parts of the petals, but this was completely deep yellow with the nice red markings on it. Well, we stay in Asia. Just a few pictures from Iran. Iran is very famous for its plants like Dionysias. More than 45 species are already known, and this is how they grow in a just vertical position into the rocks in these crevices, and that's why you cannot grow them in the garden. That's why I'm growing them in an Alpine house, and that is possible. It's a super plant. There's a valley called Chalcote Valley, and this is just a close-up of it, of course. There are millions of this Fritillaria imperialis. It's a bit variated in color. This is the best color there is, but they're also very maroon colored and even yellow ones. But you look at the soil, it's very clayey soil. It can be very wet and sticky, but when it dries out, it will be very hard. And that's why they die down then, because during summer it's very dry and the bulbs will survive there. If you fly to the let's say New Zealand or Australia, try to fly through Singapore. You see the super trees in Singapore, all artificial. This is a picture from maybe 10 years ago. It is changed now. You can make a wonderful skywalk, and it's free to visit. So if you go to Singapore, you really need to visit. You can walk up there, and you have a wonderful view over the bay. It's a wonderful experience. The super trees in Singapore. Then we end up in New Zealand with some special plants like the vegetable sheep, they call it. Sheep lying on these slopes, and it's in cushions from maybe 100 years old to put together with very tiny rosettes. One rosette is maybe 5 millimeter. And so it's a plant which takes out of the moisture from the air, and that's they grow on. Another genus in New Zealand is Asifilla. Asifilla is only found in New Zealand, and this plant is maybe 50 years old and just 20 centimeters in diameter. A very, very nice plant. And ranunculus. There are several ranunculus, but this is a special one, Ranunculus buchananii. On the right-hand corner of the picture, you can see water running down. This is really melting water. You cannot lay your hand for more than a few seconds in the water. It's freezing cold. And that's why the plants are growing there. They need freezing cold water. So if you want to grow this in your garden, you have to build a freezer into your garden. Otherwise, it won't work. But it's a super plant. We ended up our trip in South America. This is the famous picture, of course, from Machu Picchu, an area with a lot of tropical plants. But in Peru are high mountains. And in these high mountains are also very special plants. Once we took a bus on the pass, you will see here 4,700 meters, and we parked a car there. You will see all these white blobs on the ground, and this is a special Nototrichia. Nototrichia is known for Peru, a bit of Chile, Bolivia, and makes wonderful plants. Very compact, always under these scree conditions. They make a big taproot, Not all are named. There's still a lot of plants unnamed. There are one or two in cultivation, but not easy. Look at this one. This is even growing in a cacti. Outside you, the surrounds are cacti. Inside is this wonderful Nototrichia obtusa. And well, there are always mammals like vicunias and guanacos wandering around and eating these plants, but they never can reach this one. It's protected by the cacti. Well, here I am with my wife next to a very large cushion of Azorella compacta. This cushion can be maybe 2,000 years old. It's growing less than a millimeter each year. You can sit on it, you can hit your hand on it, you bruise your hand. It's like a rock. It forms these wonderful cushions, and it's amazing. You see at the back a few more of these cushions, and it's always growing above 4,600 meters in the Andes. Now we come to, I think, the queen of the Andes, it's called Pujaramondiai. It's one of the largest, I think it is the largest alpine in the world. It's growing around 4,000 meters altitude. It starts growing as a small seedling, of course, and then it grows and grows. The rosettes are up to 2 meters across, and it will take a plant up to 120, 150 years to develop a flowering spike, starting to flower, and after flower, they die. They send out millions of seeds and start a new generation. I will show you now a picture next, so you have got an impression how tall it is. This is me next to this giant Pujaramondiai, and you have to be very careful because the leaves has very terrible hooks, so it's protected themselves. It's unfortunate, as I said, they die off, and but it's a wonderful plant. And if you, unfortunately, there are a few areas where this is still growing, but it's in plant on the red list these days. Just a few pictures from Ecuador. Another tall plant, up to 2.5 meters tall. Aspletias also growing in, the species is growing in Colombia and also Venezuela. But this is not dying after, so it's not marking monocarpic. It's not dying after flowering. The flowers are always at the top. It's growing also at 3.5, 4,000 meters, always in very moist conditions. And here you see the wonderful flowers, the very woody leaves. And these leaves also absorb the moisture from the air, from the mist. We were very lucky when we were there to have really splendid weather to make pictures with some sun, but normally it's always foggy. And a few other pictures in Ecuador. A climbing plant, Bomaria. You will see more when you walk around other species, but this was a very pretty one, a very waxy flower, up to 3-4 centimeters is the flower long. We end up our tour, our botanical tour in Argentina, with a wonderful cushion of an oxalis, Oxalis erythrorhiza, growing here in the crevice. And that's the only way it's possible. I've tried this to grow this from seed. It's always, even in the Alpine house, it never is a nice plant. So again, just enjoy it here in nature. And this is also a super thing, Ranunculus semiverticillatus. When it's just coming out of the soil, it opens the buds. And I always say this is like broccoli. Well, it's gray, but later on, it's starting to get a bit green, and it's getting bigger and bigger. It's a scree plant growing very close to the edges of snow. A very difficult plant, but I understand that I think in Gothenburg Botanical Garden, they managed to get it almost into flower. Well, these calceolarias, all the calceolarias mainly come from South America. Well, this is near Bariloche, a very famous ski area. And when there's a ski area, there are lifts, so it's easy to get higher up. And this is a super plant, very easy from seed and also not difficult in cultivation. And then finally, some very, very special plants. For me, the stars of the South American alpines are the violas, the rosulate violas. And this rosette, this whole plant you see is maybe 3-4 centimeters. And the rosettes you see are like a sempervivum, but the flowers are formed along the edges. It's a super plant, very, very difficult to get into cultivation. It's growing under scree conditions, and I put one more in. And as you see, this is Viola Columnaris. Well, it makes a column. It's growing higher up, and you see the flowers. They're real violas. When I first saw these pictures, black and white, maybe 30 years ago, when I started to grow plants, and I thought I once want to see them. Well, here they are in peak condition. So I think this is one of the pictures, and now we go to my garden, because, well, we have seen a lot of plants in the wild, but I tried to grow as many different kinds in my garden, in my Alpine house, in my frame. This is the front garden. You see at the back there's a kind of peat block with Cypripedium, and in the front you see big Tufa lumps, big rocks, and all the blue and all you see is all made, Adrianthus is a compilation made from seed. And this is another part in the garden. When I visit the botanical garden in Brno, in the Czech Republic, they have such weird ideas. And I try to incorporate this in the garden as well. And they made a lot of, they had a tufa wall, but all from concrete. And I thought this is not looking so nice. So I took some granite curbstones, and in a triangular way. I cemented these big blocks together. And you see in the taller one, the top is Daphne arbuscula in peak condition already for 30 years. At the top there's a small sprinkler that keeps all the rocks moist. And lower down you see Primula auricula. Well, have you ever tried Pleione outside? This is Pleione formosana. You see Shortia on the left side, more Pleione. You see in the back some Cypripedium. There are several Pleiones are hardy. We had this year minus 18 Celsius in the garden, and several of the Pleione have managed to stay alive. So I think we should try more and more of these species outside, because it's just wonderful. And this is my tufa wall. This tufa wall is made out of tufa again. Oh, this is the north-facing side. The other side is by at my neighbor's garden. I must say, very good neighbors. They loved it too. Looking after everything. There are many plants which normally are not possible to grow outside or even in the Alpine house. That's Jankaea Dreigii in this area here, which is pretty difficult to grow. And there are many Saxifrages, Ramondas, you name it. There's everywhere. Everything is growing in here, which is not possible. The top stone again is there's a bit of a sprinkler, and the water is just dripping down to keep the rocks moist if it's needed. Well, this is another part of the garden. My Alpine houses sink into the ground, and a frame with some shade. This is another frame, the small potting area with some areas to put my seedlings in. And well, we go into my Alpine house. There are a lot of Primula Eleoniae, but also other Primulas. Well, this is a nice colorful picture. Well, as I speak, a lot of these are now in flower, and it's always nice to see that in early spring. And this is in the back of the Alpine house. There's a big tufa wall. Mike Camelander invented this, and you can see also something like this in the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh. They have also a wonderful tufa Alpine house these days. And you see all these plants are growing more or less under natural conditions. They only have a roof over their head to keep the plant dry from rain. And I water just a bit from behind the stone, and they're growing as natural as possible. Then there's the frame. Of course, I'm propagating and collecting plants. So here is the frame. It's possible to move around the Dutch lights. They are from what's called plastic material. It's polycarbonate sheets. And well, I'm normally working during the day. So if it's full sun or it's shady, you can put sun or shading net on, but I automated it. So there's a small light sensor here. And if the light sensor is extreme, this runs down and it goes up again if the clouds come in. And so it helps me to prevent plants getting too overdrawn or too hot. Well, if you haven't got enough from me after this lecture, you can have a look at my website. You can check, for instance, the areas I've been. You can see something, let's see a bit about Iran, some information about Iran. You can see a map where I've traveled to locations. And if you go to this extensive photo gallery, you end up here. And you can wander around for hours and hours. Go to plant hunting trips. You can go to Europe, Asia, Central Asia. We click on Central Asia, and you see and the locations in Central Asia. For instance, Uzbekistan, Iran. Now let's see for Iran, by the way. And you see you can move around. You are in Iran, and lower down here you can see exactly the name and locations. And it's very easy to move around. And you can also, I go back, if you go to the search for photos in the top, you can also search for a genus. And if you do that, you can see this. So you see all the premolas together, nice and colorful. You see a lot of variation. If it's in China or in Europe or anywhere. Or gentians, you see all the colors from all over the world. Or the violas, I just talked about the roseate violas here and here, but also normal violas from Europe. So this gives you an idea what is all possible to look around in the world of alpines. But as you have seen, I not only look at plants, also to historic sites and also people. So I think this is it. I hope you liked it, and maybe you can visit my website, and I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, there's so much more in the world, and we're still finding new plants. Thank you.
That was amazing, Harry.
Yeah, sort of, well, we've had lots of wonderful comments in on the chat, including one saying, Annie Peckham saying, the best armchair travel I've had in lockdown. And I think it's really special to see all of these things that realistically most of us are never going to get a chance to see, and to go to places like Socotra and the Andes. And no, just
There's so much.
There is so yes.
Amazing. And your photography is absolutely extraordinary, Harry. Absolutely extraordinary. Harry, is there anywhere in the world that you haven't been that is on your list that you want to go?
Well,
there must be one place.
Yes, well, there are more places. Nepal, Bhutan. I've never been to Bhutan. I'm now working on a big tour to Nepal, the Humla area. That well, this was planned for this year. It's an area in the most western corner. Not many botanists have visited it, and I always try to go to areas not visited before, because it's exciting to see new plants. And many of my images have also GPS location. So at the end, a lot of this information is going to, like, the Royal Botanic Garden. I think it's all very important to save those locations and information. It's half scientific work as well.
Somebody was asking, Harry, what defines an alpine? Is it, if you're calling something an alpine plant, is it purely the altitude that defines that, or what's your?
For me, it's, I think, the altitude. You can see the alpines up to 8 meters tall, and they're growing above 4,000 meters.
Yes.
So it's not only compact. So I made one lecture. It's called Mega Alpines once. Well, if you look at Rio Nobile, it's growing 4,000 or 5,000 meters. It's more than 2 meters tall. It's a real alpine. But the mega alpine can also be the cushion of 3-4 meters tall, 1,000 years old.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. And your front garden is extraordinary. I thought that Portland, Oregon had the most extraordinary gardens, but I think you've really given them a run for your money. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And a question, does micropropagation aid in the propagation of alpines?
Yes, yes. More and more, but especially like Lovisias, you know Lovisias?
Yes, yes.
There are more. They've tried Gentias. There are more plants growing from micro.
Interesting.
But it's not as much as the perennials. Yes.
Good, great.
I think Harry, we ought to get you to organise a garden masterclass alpine trip. Yes, Ros is putting her thumbs in the air. Yes, definitely.
Well, to be honest, it was very difficult to put together this lecture because there are so many images and plants I've seen, and to get the flow and to get an idea what is around the world. And I hope there's so much variation in habitat, but also in how the plant grows, everything.
Well, it's very special to have that
you organise tours then, so people can obviously, if they're interested, they can check out the website.
Yes, well, to be honest, I advertised trips at my website. I had to stop it. That's okay. If people want to get involved or want to know anything, they can send me an email. Go to my website, send me an email.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
That's maybe the best way to do it.
Okay. Lorenza is asking, are there any alpines suitable for Mediterranean climates and on low sea levels?
Yes. Like the Dionysias. The Dionysias can stand quite a lot of heat.
Really?
They are coming from Iran, and they can stand a lot of heat. So it's possible. And also bulbs. It's possible, but there are some alpines which is possible. Yes.
Great.
I mean, there is that sort of the category alpine does segue so much into Mediterranean flora, because especially that limestone around the Mediterranean, very challenging conditions in which to grow. So
But Africa as well. If you go to Africa, there's many called alpines, which are not really hardy, but do well in the Mediterranean, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's been amazing, Harry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, and
what a wonderful trip. Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving this opportunity for me.
Great.
Oh, it's our pleasure, absolutely. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And don't forget, next Thursday night is the quiz. So join in and have some fun. Preferably with a drink in hand. I think it's probably in order to have a drink on. So yeah, please do join us next Thursday night. It'd be lovely to see you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Goodbye. Safe travels and thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.